Ji-woo walked through the massive doors of the academy cafeteria with her food tray in hand. The room was enormous, bigger than 3 football fields combined. Students from hundreds of different alien species filled the space with noise and movement. Some had fur, some had scales, and some looked like walking crystals that sparkled under the bright lights. She kept her head down and moved toward her assigned section. The cafeteria had rules that everyone followed without question. The strongest species sat at the top levels where the best food stations were located. The weakest species sat at the bottom near the recycling units. Humans were considered weak, so Ji-woo's seat was in the lowest section. She didn't mind too much. At least she was here, studying at the most famous school in the entire galaxy. Only 5 humans had been accepted this year out of thousands who applied. Her parents back on Earth were so proud. She couldn't mess this up by breaking the rules or causing problems. Ji-woo sat down at her small metal table and looked at her lunch. Synthetic protein that tasted like chicken, some fruit that was actually from Earth, and a chocolate bar she had been saving. Food from home was expensive here, but the chocolate made her feel less lonely. She was about to take her first bite when she heard a small sound. A whimper, soft and sad. Ji-woo turned her head and saw something that made her heart squeeze tight in her chest. Near the waste disposal unit, half hidden behind a support column, sat a small creature. It looked like a wolf pup, but was about the size of a large dog. Its fur was black with strange gray patches that looked wrong, like someone had spilled paint on it. The creature's ribs showed through its thin body, and its golden eyes watched the other students eating with desperate hunger. Ji-woo recognized the species immediately. Ralkesh. They were the top predators in the academy, the warriors who controlled the highest sections of the cafeteria. Adult Ralkesh stood over 2 meters tall with muscles like steel cables. Their teeth could crush bone, and their claws could tear through metal doors. But this small one was different. It sat alone, shaking slightly, watching its own kind eat at the top levels. None of them looked at it. None of them shared their food. Ji-woo's friend, Hyun, had explained the Ralkesh culture to her during orientation. They lived in packs, with strict rules. The strong protected the pack. The weak were cast out. Those gray patches on the small one's fur meant something bad. It meant the pack had marked it as a runt, unworthy of their protection or their food. The little Ralkesh looked at Ji-woo's table. Its nose twitched as it smelled her food. Then it quickly looked away, as if even hoping for food was too much to ask for. Ji-woo felt something twist inside her stomach. She had been taught to follow the rules here, to not draw attention to herself, to survive by staying quiet and small. But she had also been taught something else back on Earth. Her grandmother had always said that kindness mattered more than safety, that helping someone who couldn't help themselves was what made humans different. She made a decision that would change everything. Ji-woo stood up and picked up her tray. Students nearby stopped talking and stared at her. She walked away from the low section, moving toward the predator area. Whispers started spreading through the cafeteria like ripples on water. The Ralkesh section was at the highest level, reached by wide ramps. Adult Ralkesh warriors sat at large tables, tearing into huge portions of raw meat and roasted vegetables. Their conversation was full of growls and barks that her translation implant turned into words about hunting and fighting. Ji-woo walked right past them. Her hands shook, but she kept moving. She could feel dozens of predator eyes turning to watch her. Some of the warriors stopped eating, their ears pointing forward with interest or maybe anger. She reached the support column where the small Ralkesh was hiding. The pup's eyes went wide with fear and confusion. It tried to press itself flatter against the wall. Ji-woo knelt down slowly, making herself smaller and less threatening. She held out her tray and pushed it toward the little one. "You look hungry," she said softly. "Please eat." The entire cafeteria went silent. Thousands of aliens stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped moving. The only sound was the hum of the air circulation system. The small Ralkesh stared at the food, then at Jiwoo, then back at the food. Its whole body trembled. Slowly, carefully, it reached out one small paw and touched the edge of the tray. When Jiwoo didn't move or yell, the pup pulled the tray closer and began to eat. It ate quickly, desperately, as if the food might disappear. Jiwoo smiled and stood up. She turned to walk back to her section. That was when she saw him. The largest Ralkesh she had ever seen stood on the highest platform watching her. His fur was black with silver streaks running through it, and his eyes were the color of amber. Scars crossed his muzzle and shoulders, marks of countless battles. He wore a leader's sash across his chest with symbols she couldn't read. He stared at Jiwoo with an expression she couldn't understand. Not anger, not confusion. Something else. Something that made her feel like she had just done something far more important than she realized. Jiwoo bowed slightly, the way her mother had taught her to show respect, and walked back to her seat. Her legs felt weak and her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. She sat down at her empty table. Her lunch was gone, but she didn't feel hungry anymore. She felt strange, like the air around her had changed somehow. Hyun rushed over to her table, his eyes huge with shock. "Do you know what you just did?" he whispered urgently. "That was Tarek, the Blood Shadow Pack Alpha. And you just fed one of his pack members. Jiwoo, the Ralkesh don't forget things like this. Ever." Jiwoo looked back at the support column. The small Ralkesh had finished eating and was licking the tray clean. For the first time since she had seen it, the little one's tail moved slightly. Not quite a wag, but close. "I know," Jiwoo said quietly, "but it was hungry. I couldn't just watch." She didn't know it yet, but those simple words and that single act of kindness had just activated an ancient code that hadn't been used in over 200 years. By tomorrow morning, everything would be different. The next morning, Jiwoo walked into the cafeteria for breakfast, feeling nervous. She hadn't slept well. All night she kept thinking about the small Ralkesh and the way the big Alpha had stared at her. Hyun had spent an hour warning her about possible consequences, about how predator species didn't like when prey species interfered with their business. But when she stepped through the doors, she froze completely. Her usual table in the low section was gone. Well, not gone exactly, but she couldn't see it anymore because 6 massive Ralkesh warriors were standing around it in a protective circle. Their bodies formed a wall of fur and muscle that blocked her small table from view. Every single one of them stood perfectly still, their eyes scanning the cafeteria like guards watching for danger. The space around them was empty. Every other student had moved their tables away, creating a clear zone at least 10 meters wide in all directions. Nobody wanted to get close to that many Ralkesh warriors. Even the cafeteria staff were keeping their distance, setting food trays on the edge of the empty zone and backing away quickly. Jiwoo's heart started beating fast. This couldn't be good. Maybe she was in trouble. Maybe they were angry that she had fed the runt. Maybe she was about to be kicked out of the academy. Then the circle of warriors parted, opening like a door. In the center stood the massive Alpha from yesterday, Tarek. His silver-streaked black fur seemed to shine under the lights, and his amber eyes locked onto her immediately. Jiwoo wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She just stood there holding her empty breakfast tray while hundreds of students watched from a safe distance. Tarek raised one clawed hand and gestured toward the center of the circle. Jiwoo saw her table there, exactly where it had always been, but now it looked different, important, like a throne in the middle of a royal guard. The Alpha spoke. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together, but her translation implant turned the growls and barks into words she could understand. "The human Jiwoo has honored our pack's forgotten blood," Tarek announced loudly enough for the entire cafeteria to hear. She fed the weakest when she herself possessed little. She showed mercy when no one watched and no reward was offered. Jiwoo's mouth went dry. Every alien in the room was staring at her now. By the old code, she has claimed Kesheral, Tarek continued, the debt of mercy. From this day forward, her seat is our seat. Her safety is our hunt. Her enemies are our prey. The 6 warriors around the table dropped to one knee at the same time, their heads bowed toward Jiwoo. The sound of their knees hitting the floor echoed through the silent cafeteria like thunder. Jiwoo didn't know what to do. She looked around desperately and saw Hyun in the crowd. His face was pale with shock, and he mouthed the words, "Just go," at her. She walked forward slowly, her legs shaking with each step. The warriors stayed kneeling until she reached the table. Then they stood and resumed their protective positions around her. Jiwoo sat down carefully, feeling like she was in some kind of strange dream. Before she could even process what was happening, she heard small paws clicking against the floor. The Ralkesh pup from yesterday came running toward the circle. The warriors let it through without hesitation. The little one looked completely different. Its fur had been groomed and brushed until the black parts shined. The gray patches were still there, but they looked cleaner somehow. Around its neck was a small sash with symbols that matched the ones on Tarek's chest. The pup's ribs weren't showing anymore, and its eyes were bright and alert instead of dull with hunger. The pup walked straight to Jiwoo and did something that made her breath catch in her throat. It sat down in front of her, tilted its head back, and exposed its throat completely. The vulnerable part where all the important blood vessels were located. The part that, if bitten, would mean instant death. Jiwoo remembered learning about this in her xenobiology class, the throat offering. Among Ralkesh, it was the highest sign of trust and submission. It meant, "I trust you completely with my life." She didn't know the right way to respond, so she did what felt natural. She reached out slowly and gently touched the top of the pup's head. The little one's tail started wagging so hard its whole body wiggled. "His name is Kiran," Tarek said from behind her. "He is my brother's youngest son. The pack had declared him too weak to survive. We followed the old ways and cast him aside to face his fate alone." Tarek walked around to face Jiwoo directly. Then he did the same thing the pup had done. The massive alpha, the leader of warriors, tilted his head back and exposed his throat to a small human girl. "You proved our old ways were wrong," he said. "You saw worth where we saw weakness. You gave from your little when we withheld from our plenty. You are pack-honored now. We protect you as we protect our own." One by one, each of the 6 warriors performed the throat offering. Jiwoo felt tears building in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She stood up and bowed deeply to all of them, the way she had been taught to show respect back on Earth. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I just wanted to help." "That is why the code binds us," Tarek replied. "True honor comes from helping when no benefit exists for yourself." The cafeteria slowly returned to normal activity, but nothing was actually normal anymore. Jiwoo ate her breakfast with Kiran, sitting pressed against her leg under the table. The warriors maintained their posts around her, not threatening anyone but making it very clear that this space was protected. Students who had ignored Jiwoo before now stared at her with expressions ranging from respect to fear to confusion. A group of Velthari, bird-like aliens who usually got bullied by larger species, cautiously approached the edge of the protection zone. "Excuse us," one of them chirped nervously. "We were wondering, could the honored human perhaps speak to the pack about our seating arrangements? Some of the larger species have been taking our tables." Jiwoo looked at Tarek, unsure. He nodded slightly. "I can try," Jiwoo said. "Everyone should have a safe place to eat." The Velthari's feathers puffed up with relief and gratitude. They hurried away, whispering excitedly to each other. Hyun finally worked up the courage to approach. He stopped at the edge of the warrior circle and waved awkwardly. Is it okay if I sit with you? He asked. Tarek looked at Jiwoo. She nodded. He's my friend. The warriors opened the circle to let Hyun through. He practically ran to the table and sat down, his eyes huge. This is the most insane thing that's ever happened in Academy history, he whispered. Do you understand what you've done? You've completely broken the hierarchy. That hasn't happened in, ever. I just gave someone my lunch, Jiwoo said, scratching behind Kieran's ears. The pup made a happy rumbling sound. You activated a code that's older than human civilization, Hyun corrected. There are going to be consequences, not all of them good. Jiwoo looked at Tarek and the warriors standing guard around her. She looked at Kieran, who was healthy and happy instead of starving and alone. She thought about the Velthari, who finally had someone to help them stand up to bullies. Maybe some consequences are worth it, she said. Tarek's ears moved forward, and if wolves could smile, Jiwoo thought he might be smiling. The human understands, he said. This is good. But across the cafeteria, in the shadows of the upper levels, other Ralkesh warriors were watching. Their eyes were cold and angry. Not all packs agreed with what Tarek had done. Not everyone believed that an ancient code should protect a weak prey species. Trouble was coming. Jiwoo just didn't know it yet. 2 weeks passed, and Jiwoo slowly got used to her new life. Having 6 Ralkesh warriors guard her everywhere felt strange at first, but they were surprisingly respectful. They gave her space when she studied, stayed quiet during her classes, and only intervened when someone approached her with bad intentions. Kieran became her constant companion. The young Ralkesh followed her to every class, slept outside her dormitory door at night, and always sat pressed against her leg during meals. He was learning to speak basic human language, though his voice came out rough and mixed with growls. Jiwoo kind, he would say, his tail wagging. Jiwoo pack! Other students started treating her differently, too. Species that used to look down on humans now nodded respectfully when they passed her in the hallways. The Velthari brought her small gifts of gratitude. Even some of the professors seemed impressed that she had earned Ralkesh protection. Her human friend Minho thought it was hilarious. You've got the most terrifying bodyguards in the entire galaxy, he laughed during study period. I'm so jealous. Nobody ever bothers you anymore. But not everyone was happy about the situation. The trouble started during a joint combat training session. All species were required to take self-defense classes together, learning how to handle conflicts without causing serious harm. It was supposed to teach cooperation and control. Jiwoo was paired with another human student named Jisoo for a simple evasion exercise. They were practicing how to dodge attacks from larger opponents. The instructor, a massive rock-like being called a Grethon, was explaining proper footwork when a group of Ralkesh entered the training arena. These weren't from Tarek's pack. Jiwoo could tell immediately because their sashes had different symbols, red instead of blue. They moved with aggressive confidence, pushing smaller students out of their way as they took positions on the training mats. The leader was a Ralkesh named Vector. He was younger than Tarek, but nearly as large, with bright yellow eyes and black fur without any silver streaks. Scars covered his arms and face, each one probably earned in combat. He saw Jiwoo and his lips pulled back, showing rows of sharp teeth. "So this is the pet human," Vector said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "The soft skin that made Tarek's pack into nursemaids." Jiwoo felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she kept quiet. Tarek had warned her that some Ralkesh didn't approve of the Kesharal code being invoked for a prey species. The training session began. Students paired off for exercises. Vector made sure to position himself near the humans. When it was time for strength demonstrations, he volunteered to spar against Jisoo. "I'll be gentle," Vector said, his voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Humans are so fragile." The instructor nodded approval, assuming Vector would follow the rules about controlled contact and safety limits. He didn't. The moment the exercise started, Vector moved with full combat speed. His clawed hand swept out and caught Jisoo across the shoulder, tearing through the protective padding and drawing blood. Jisoo cried out and fell to the mat, clutching the wound. The instructor rushed forward, but Vector simply shrugged. "An accident," he said with a cruel smile. "I forgot how weak they are." Jiwoo's vision went red with anger. She dropped her training equipment and marched straight toward Vector, ignoring Minho's whispered warnings to stay back. "That wasn't an accident," Jiwoo said, her voice shaking with fury. "You hurt him on purpose." Vector looked down at her, amused. "And what will the little human do about it? Cry? Run to Tarek for protection?" "I'll tell you what I think," Jiwoo said, stepping closer despite her fear. "I think your strength is wasted on cruelty. I think you're so insecure about your own worth that you need to hurt those weaker than you to feel powerful. You dishonor your own people by acting like a bully instead of a warrior." The entire training arena went silent. Nobody spoke to a Ralkesh Alpha like that, especially not a human. Vector's amusement vanished, replaced by cold rage. "You dare lecture me about honor? You're prey! You exist to be eaten or protected, nothing more." "Then why are you so angry?" Jiwoo challenged. "If I'm just prey, why do my words bother you?" Vector's claws extended, and for a moment Jiwoo thought he might actually attack her. But then he smiled, and somehow that was worse than anger. "You think words matter, soft skin? Among Ralkesh, only claws and teeth speak truth." He raised his voice to address the whole arena. "I challenge Alpha Tarek of the Blood Shadow Pack to a formal dominance duel. Winner takes control of both packs. Loser and their pack are exiled from this academy." Gasps echoed through the training room. Dominance duels were serious business, often ending in severe injury or death. "And if he refuses?" the instructor asked, clearly concerned. "Then his pack is considered forfeit." "They lose all rank and protection." Vector looked at Jiwoo with triumph in his eyes. "Including their precious pet human." The instructor tried to mediate, but Vector was within his cultural rights to issue the challenge. Academy rules protected traditional practices, even violent ones, as long as all parties consented. News of the challenge spread through the academy faster than light-speed communications. By that evening, everyone knew that Tarek would have to fight Vector in 3 days' time. The arena had already been reserved. Betting pools were forming across all species about who would win. Jiwoo felt sick with guilt. This was her fault. If she hadn't spoken up, if she hadn't challenged Vector, none of this would be happening. She found Tarek in the pack's common area, surrounded by his warriors who were discussing strategy. When he saw her, he dismissed the others so they could talk privately. "This is because of me," Jiwoo said immediately, tears running down her face. "I should leave the academy. If I'm gone, maybe Vector will cancel the challenge." "No," Tarek said firmly. "You spoke truth. Vector was angry because your words exposed his weakness. But you might get hurt, or exiled. Your whole pack might suffer because I couldn't keep my mouth shut." Tarek placed one massive paw on her shoulder, gentle despite his strength. "You gave honor when no one watched. That is worth more than 1,000 victories. We fight not because we must, but because it is right." Kieran pushed his way into the room and pressed against Jiwoo's leg. "Uncle Strong," he said in his rough voice. "Uncle Win. You not worry." But Jiwoo was worried. She had seen Vector move during training. He was fast and vicious, and he had no emotional attachments to hold him back. Tarek was older, more experienced, but also carrying old injuries that might slow him down. That night, instead of sleeping, Ji-woo went to the academy library. If she had caused this problem, maybe she could find a solution. Humans weren't strong or fast, but they were good at research and finding creative solutions to impossible problems. She started digging through files on Ralkesh combat history, looking for anything that might help. Hours passed. Her eyes grew tired from reading alien text through her translation implant. Then, just before dawn, she found something. A small note in an ancient record, written in old Ralkesh dialect that her implant struggled to translate properly. It mentioned something called the Trial of Worth, an alternative to combat duels that tested wisdom instead of strength. Ji-woo's heart started beating faster. This might be the answer. But the code was so old that modern Ralkesh probably didn't even know about it anymore. And even if she could prove it existed, would Vector accept it? She had 3 days to figure it out. 3 days to find a way to save Tarek's pack without anyone having to bleed. Ji-woo spent the next 2 days living in the library. She barely ate or slept, too focused on researching the ancient Trial of Worth. The more she read, the more excited she became. This wasn't just some forgotten tradition, it was the original purpose of Ralkesh challenges, created long before their culture became focused purely on physical combat. The trial tested 3 qualities that true leaders needed: the ability to guide others, the willingness to sacrifice for the pack, and the wisdom to understand those who were different. Combat had replaced it over thousands of years because fighting was faster and more dramatic. But the old code never said the trial was invalid. It just got forgotten. Her human friend Sora, who studied xenolinguistics, helped her translate the ancient texts into modern Ralkesh. They practiced pronunciation until Ji-woo could speak the formal words without her implant's help. The ancient dialect sounded different from modern Ralkesh, more musical somehow, with longer vowel sounds. "Are you sure about this?" Sora asked nervously. "If you mess up the pronunciation, it might sound like you're insulting him instead of challenging him." "I have to try," Ji-woo said. "I won't let Tarek fight because of my mistake." She brought her findings to Tarek that night. The Alpha studied the data tablet she offered, his amber eyes moving across the ancient text. Several of his senior warriors gathered around to read over his shoulder. "This is real," one of them said with surprise. "My grandmother told me stories about the Trial of Worth when I was a pup. I thought they were just legends." Tarek looked at Ji-woo with something like pride in his expression. "You researched our history to find this?" "Humans aren't strong," Ji-woo said. "But we're good at finding other solutions, different paths to solve problems." "Vector will never accept," another warrior warned. "He wants blood. He wants to prove his dominance through violence." "Then we make him look foolish for refusing," Ji-woo said, channeling every diplomatic lesson she'd ever learned. "If he rejects an ancient, honorable tradition just because he wants to fight, what does that say about his leadership?" Tarek's ears moved forward with interest. "The human thinks strategically. This is good." He stood up to his full height. "We will try your way first. If it fails, I will face him with claws." The day of the duel arrived. The combat arena was packed with thousands of students from every species in the academy. The atmosphere felt electric with anticipation. Dominance duels were rare, and everyone wanted to witness this one. Betting pools had been running for days. Most favored Vector to win. He was younger, faster, and fought without mercy or hesitation. Tarek was respected but older, carrying injuries from decades of battles. The arena floor was circular, 50 meters across, with safety barriers around the edges. Medical teams stood ready in case of serious injuries. The Academy Council sat in a special observation box, there to ensure the rules were followed and declare an official winner. Vector entered first with his Bloodfang pack behind him. They performed an intimidating war display, howling and striking their claws against the floor in rhythm. The sound echoed through the arena like thunder. Vector wore traditional combat sashes with sharp metal decorations that could be used as weapons. Tarek entered next with his blood shadow pack. They moved with quiet dignity. No dramatic displays, just calm confidence. Tarek wore simple sashes without decorations. His warriors formed a line behind him, and Jiwoo stood at the edge of the group, holding her data tablet with shaking hands. The council leader, an ancient being called a chronarch whose species lived for thousands of years, raised one crystalline appendage for silence. "We are gathered to witness a formal dominance challenge," the chronarch's voice boomed. "The winner claims leadership of both packs. The loser and their followers accept exile from this academy. Do both parties accept these terms?" "Accepted," Vector growled, his muscles tensing for combat. "Wait," Jiwoo said, stepping forward before Tarek could respond. Her voice sounded tiny in the huge arena, but the microphones picked it up and broadcast it everywhere. Thousands of eyes turned toward her. Jiwoo felt her legs shaking, but she forced herself to keep moving until she stood in the center of the arena floor. "I invoke the trial of worth," she said in ancient Ralkesh, pronouncing each word carefully. "As witnessed by the honored packs and the wisdom of the council." Confused murmurs spread through the crowd. Most Ralkesh had never heard the phrase before, and other species had no idea what it meant. Vector laughed, a harsh barking sound. "What game is this? I challenged for combat, not riddles from a prey species." "The trial of worth predates combat duels by 3,000 years, Jiwoo continued, switching back to common speech. "It tests true leadership through wisdom, sacrifice, and understanding. The old codes say that any challenged pack leader may choose this trial instead of combat." She held up her data tablet, displaying the ancient texts for the council to see. The chronarch leaned forward with interest, and other council members began pulling up their own archive access to verify her claims. "This is real," one of them confirmed after a moment. "The tradition exists in the oldest Ralkesh records." Vector's amusement vanished. "I don't accept this. The challenge was issued for combat." "Because you're afraid," Jiwoo said, her voice steady now. "You're afraid that without violence, you have nothing to prove your worth. If you fight for true honor, you should welcome any test of leadership. But if you fight only for pride and cruelty, then bare your claws and show everyone what you really are." The crowd reacted with shocked whispers and excited chittering sounds. A human was directly challenging a Ralkesh Alpha's courage. It was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Vector's eyes blazed with fury, but he was trapped. If he refused the trial now, he would look cowardly in front of the entire academy. If he accepted, he would have to compete in tests he wasn't prepared for. "Fine," he snarled. "Name your trial, soft skin. But when your words fail and Tarek falls, I will remember your interference." "The council will design 3 challenges," Jiwoo said, looking up at the observation box, each one testing a different aspect of leadership. Both pack leaders will compete, and neutral judges will determine the winner of each challenge. Whoever wins 2 out of 3 trials wins the overall contest. The chronarch conferred with the other council members. After several minutes of discussion, they agreed. "We will design fair challenges and oversee their completion," the chronarch announced. "Both parties must agree to accept the council's judgment on each trial's winner." Tarek stepped forward and placed his hand over his heart, the Ralkesh gesture of binding oath. "I accept the terms." Vector hesitated, then made the same gesture with visible reluctance. "Accepted." "The trials will begin tomorrow morning," the chronarch declared. "This gives both leaders time to prepare. The first challenge will test leadership ability. The second will test sacrifice. The third will test understanding of others." The crowd erupted into excited discussions as students debated what the challenges might involve. The betting pools scrambled to adjust their odds now that combat was off the table. Tarek's pack surrounded Jiwoo as they left the arena. Several of the warriors were grinning with fierce pride. "The human found a warrior's solution without using claws," one of them said. "This is wisdom." But Tarek looked concerned. He pulled Jiwoo aside once they reached a quiet corridor. "You have given us a chance," he said seriously. "But Vector is not stupid. He will use tomorrow to prepare, to find any advantage. These trials may be harder than combat would have been." "I know," Jiwoo admitted. "But at least nobody has to die." Kieran pressed against her leg and looked up with worried golden eyes. "Jiwoo smart. Uncle smart. We win together." Jiwoo hoped he was right. She had bought them time and changed the battlefield from one of pure violence to one where strategy and wisdom mattered. But Vector was still dangerous, still determined to win. Tomorrow would reveal whether human creativity could really match predator instinct. The first trial began at dawn. The council had worked through the night designing challenges that would truly test leadership without giving either competitor an unfair advantage. Students packed the observation areas around the arena, everyone eager to see how this unusual contest would unfold. The first challenge was called the Maze of Voices. Both pack leaders stood at the entrance of a complex maze that the council had constructed using holographic walls and force fields. The twist was that both Tarek and Vector would be blindfolded. They could see nothing. Their pack members would be scattered throughout the maze wearing sensor tags. The alphas had to guide all their pack members to the exit, using only voice commands through communication devices. "This tests your ability to lead without physical presence," the Chronarch explained, "to be understood clearly and to trust your pack to follow your guidance." Jiwoo watched nervously from the observation deck as both leaders were blindfolded and given their communication links. Tarek's pack members, including 6 warriors and young Kieran, entered the maze from different points. Vector's pack did the same. The trial began. Vector immediately started shouting orders through his comlink. "Turn left! No! Your other left! Move faster! What's wrong with you?" His voice grew more frustrated with each command. His pack members stumbled and collided with force field walls, unable to follow his rapid-fire instructions properly. Tarek took a different approach. He spoke calmly and clearly. "Kieran, you should feel a warm breeze on your right side. That's from a ventilation shaft. Follow the warmth." He paused, giving time for the instruction to be processed. "Geral, count your steps. On the 15th step, you'll reach a junction. Tell me what you hear." One by one, Tarek guided his pack members through the maze using clear instructions and patient questions. He adapted his communication style for each individual, knowing that Kieran needed simpler directions, while his experienced warriors could handle more complex guidance. When pack members made mistakes, Vector berated them angrily. "You're useless. How can you not follow simple commands?" His frustration made his pack nervous, causing more errors. Tarek encouraged his pack when they struggled. "You're doing well. The maze is designed to confuse. Trust your instincts and my voice." 30 minutes into the challenge, all of Tarek's pack members had reached the exit safely. Vector still had 3 members lost in the maze, wandering in circles while their alpha shouted contradictory orders. "The first trial goes to Tarek of Blood Shadow Pack," the Chronarch declared. "Leadership requires clarity, patience, and trust." Vector tore off his blindfold, his face twisted with anger. But he couldn't argue with the results. His own approach had failed. The second trial began after a short break. This one was called the Resource Choice. Both pack leaders were given food rations sufficient to feed only half their pack for a 2-day survival exercise in the Academy's wilderness training area. They had to decide how to distribute the limited resources. "This tests your willingness to sacrifice for your pack," the Chronarch explained. and your wisdom in managing scarcity." Vector took the largest share for himself immediately. "The Alpha must be strongest," he declared. "If I fall, the pack falls. Therefore, I need the most resources." He distributed the remaining rations unevenly, giving more to his strongest warriors and less to the weaker members. His reasoning made logical sense from a pure survival standpoint. Keep the strongest fighters at full power to protect the group. Tarek did something different. He divided the rations equally among all his pack members, taking nothing for himself. "Alpha, you need to eat," one of his warriors protested. "I need my pack to be strong more than I need a full stomach," Tarek replied. "We share all burdens equally." The pack members looked at each other, then each one split their own ration in half, passing the extra portions to Tarek. He tried to refuse, but they insisted. "If the Alpha teaches sharing, then we share with the Alpha," they said. By the end, everyone in Tarek's pack had nearly equal portions. Some had slightly more, some slightly less, but the distribution was fair and everyone had willingly participated in making it work. The judges observed both groups during the 2-day survival period. Vector's pack was divided and tense. The weaker members who received less food watched the stronger ones with resentment. When challenges arose, cooperation was minimal because everyone was focused on their own survival. Tarek's pack moved as a unified team. They shared everything beyond just food, worked together on every task, and looked out for each other constantly. When one member struggled, others immediately helped without being asked. "The second trial goes to Tarek of Blood Shadow Pack," the Chronarch declared when the survival period ended. "True sacrifice builds unity, not division." The crowd was going wild with excitement. Tarek was winning. If he took the third trial, he would win the entire contest without a single drop of blood being spilled. Vector looked dangerous now, his pride wounded by 2 consecutive defeats. His pack members were grumbling among themselves, questioning his decisions. The third and final trial was called the Stranger's Dispute. Each Alpha would be presented with 2 species they had never encountered before who were having a conflict. The Alphas had to successfully mediate the dispute and find a solution that both parties accepted. Both leaders were taken to separate rooms. Vector went first. The Council had brought in 2 species from distant sectors of the galaxy specifically for this test. The aliens began explaining their problem through translators. According to the observers who watched through monitors, Vector approached the mediation like a combat situation. He sized up both parties, decided which one was stronger, and supported that side while intimidating the weaker party into submission. The dispute ended with one alien backing down in fear, not because a real solution was found. Then it was Tarek's turn. He invited Jiwoo to come with him as a cultural advisor, knowing that humans had different perspectives that might help. The 2 aliens explained their problem. One species communicated through colors displayed on their skin. The other communicated through scent chemicals. They were roommates at the academy but couldn't understand each other's signals, leading to constant misunderstandings and hurt feelings. Tarek listened carefully to both sides. Then he looked at Jiwoo. "What would humans do?" "We'd find a common language," Jiwoo suggested. "Something both can use and understand equally." Tarek nodded and proposed that both aliens use the Academy's standard text communication system for important messages. Colors and scents could still be used for casual interaction, but anything critical would be written down where both could clearly understand. He also suggested they create a simple reference guide together, teaching each other the meanings of basic colors and scents. This way they could start learning each other's natural communication methods over time. Both aliens agreed enthusiastically. Not only was their immediate problem solved, but they had a path forward for building real understanding and maybe even friendship. "The third trial goes to Tarek of Blood Shadow Pack," the Chronarch declared. Understanding comes from listening and seeking common ground, not from imposing your will on others. The arena erupted with cheers. Tarek had won all 3 trials. He had proven his leadership through wisdom, sacrifice, and empathy rather than violence. Vector stood in the center of the arena looking at his pack. Many of them were avoiding eye contact with him now, their faith in his leadership clearly shaken. In Ralkesh tradition, this was when the loser either accepted exile or challenged for combat anyway, abandoning honor for one last attempt at victory through violence. Vector's claws extended. His muscles tensed. Jiwoo saw the rage in his eyes and knew what was coming. He was going to attack, probably targeting her since she was the one who had changed the rules on him. Vector lunged forward with supernatural speed, crossing the arena floor in seconds. His claws reached for Jiwoo's throat, but he never made it. Kiran, despite being young and small, threw himself between them. The young Ralkesh's eyes blazed with protective fury as he bared his teeth at the attacking alpha. Then something unexpected happened. The 6 warriors from Tarek's pack formed a living wall in front of Jiwoo, but they weren't alone. 4 warriors from Vector's own pack joined them, standing against their former alpha to protect the human. "No," one of Vector's former warriors said firmly. "We saw the truth in the trials. Jiwoo and Tarek showed us what real leadership looks like. We won't follow you anymore." Vector found himself surrounded by his own people, all of them choosing honor and wisdom over his violent ways. He was truly alone now, isolated by his own cruelty and pride. Tarek stepped forward calmly. "You have a choice, Vector. Accept exile and leave with whatever dignity remains to you, or join my pack as an equal member and learn what it means to lead with more than just fear and strength." "Join your pack?" Vector's voice was full of disbelief. "After I challenged you? After I tried to hurt your human?" "Everyone deserves a chance to grow," Jiwoo said, stepping out from behind the protective wall of warriors. "Even those who start as enemies. That's what being part of a pack means. You don't give up on people just because they make mistakes." Vector stared at her, then at Tarek, then at his own former pack members who had abandoned him. Slowly, his claws retracted. His aggressive posture relaxed into something that looked almost like defeat, but also maybe relief. He dropped to one knee and performed the throat offering to Tarek. "I accept your terms, Alpha. Teach me your ways." Tarek touched the top of Vector's head gently. "Welcome to Blood Shadow Pack, brother." The arena exploded with cheers and celebration. History had been made. Not only had a challenge been resolved without violence, but a former enemy had been welcomed into the pack instead of being destroyed or exiled. 6 months passed. The story of the Trial of Worth spread throughout the entire galactic community. Other species began adopting similar practices for resolving conflicts. The Academy became famous as a place where different approaches to leadership could flourish. The cafeteria changed completely. The old hierarchy based on predator-prey classifications was officially abolished. Students from all species could sit anywhere they wanted. Ralkesh warriors helped smaller students reach high shelves. Prey species felt safe eating next to predators. The entire culture transformed. Jiwoo sat at a table in the middle section one morning, eating breakfast with her friends. Kiran, now nearly full-grown and strong, sat beside her as always. Tarek's pack had grown to include members from several different Ralkesh groups, all learning the old ways of wisdom and sacrifice. Vector sat a few tables away with some of the younger pack members. He was teaching them meditation techniques for controlling anger, sharing lessons he was still learning himself. He caught Jiwoo's eye and nodded respectfully. She smiled and nodded back. Then a new human student entered the cafeteria, looking scared and overwhelmed. Her name was Yunji, and she clearly had no idea where to sit or what to do. Jiwoo stood up and walked over to her. "Hi, I'm Jiwoo. Want to sit with us?" Yunji's eyes widened with relief. "Really? I heard humans have to sit in the low sections. That's old news, Jiwoo said with a warm smile. She offered Yunji half of her sandwich. Here. You look hungry. Yunji took the food gratefully. Thank you so much. Everyone here seems so intimidating. They're actually pretty great once you get to know them, Jiwoo assured her. Come on, I'll introduce you to my friends. As they walked back to the table together, Tarek's deep voice rumbled from his seat nearby. Always there is kindness from the human Jiwoo. This is why we follow the old ways now. Kieran's tail wagged as he made room for the new student. Welcome. You are Pak now. Yunji looked confused. Pak? But I'm human. So is Jiwoo, Tarek said. Pak is not about species. Pak is about honor, loyalty, and kindness. You will learn. Jiwoo watched as her friends welcomed Yunji into their group. Ralkesh warriors, human students, Velthari with their colorful feathers, and even a few reformed members of Vector's old pack, all sitting together as equals. She thought about that day months ago when she had simply shared her lunch with a hungry cub. Such a small action. But it had changed everything. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't advanced weapons or superior strength. It was the ability to see worth in everyone, to extend compassion without expecting anything in return, and to believe that even old enemies could become new friends. The universe was full of predators and prey, warriors and scholars, strong and weak. But Jiwoo had proven that those categories didn't matter as much as people thought. What mattered was choosing kindness when no one was watching. What mattered was protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. What mattered was building bridges instead of walls. One student. One lunch, one choice. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the galaxy.